Lena sat at the edge of the quiet park, her fingers tracing patterns in the smooth metal of the holophoto frame. Inside it glowed a smiling image of her best friend, Aaron, wearing the bright orange uniform of the Mars Resettlement Corps. They had grown up together on Earth, chasing fireflies and dreaming about the stars. Now Aaron was 12 million kilometers away. Every sunrise felt lonelier without his easy laugh echoing beside her. She looked up at the pale blue sky and remembered how they used to climb that old oak tree, pretending it was their spaceship. Back then, she'd never imagined that one day she would watch him climb into a real shuttle. When he left, he promised they would stay close. But messages between Earth and Mars took so long to send, and replies were even slower. Days stretched into weeks, and Lena felt her hopes shrink with every unanswered sign. At home, Lena kept Aaron's letter on her desk. He had written about his first steps on Mars, about the red dust under his boots, and how the sky looked pink at sunset. Yet he had not asked much about her, and she wondered if he had forgotten how she laughed when he tried to teach her zero-gravity hop. Her heart ached when she reread his words, feeling the space grow wider with each line. One evening, Lena stood before the old workshop where she and Aaron had built model rockets. The shelves held dusty engines and broken parts they never used. She pressed a hand to the cool workbench and let her eyes wander over the tools. Suddenly she felt something awaken inside her, the same spark that had fired her first cardboard. Rocket into the backyard sky. She thought of humanity's greatest feats. The first step on the moon, the brave souls who voyaged across the void, the way people came together to solve impossible problems. If humans could reach Mars, could they not reach each other's hearts? Lena drew in a steady breath. She would build a tiny transmitter, something just enough to carry her voice across the vast emptiness. It would be simple. A small dish, a low-power signal, but it would reach Aaron. 4 nights she worked by the light of a single lamp. She fused circuits, soldered wires, and calibrated the dish so its beam would point straight at Mars's orbit. Her fingers grew sore, her eyes blurred, but she did not stop. In the quiet hum of the workshop, she whispered secrets and stories her new favorite song. The way rain smelled after summer and recorded each word on a loop. When it was ready, Lena carried the transmitter to the rooftop behind her apartment. The city lights stretched below like a river of stars, and the Milky Way arched above. She set up the dish and aimed it toward Mars's rising point. Her heart pounded as she flipped the switch. At first, there was only silence, broken by the faint chirp of distant satellites. Then, deeper in the static, she heard a single word. Lena. Her breath caught. It was Aaron's voice, thin but real. I heard you. Lena's eyes filled with tears as his question floated across the millions of kilometers. Her hope had found its way through the void. She spoke back into the microphone, her voice trembling. Aaron, I've missed you. I built this so we could talk. Around her, the night was still, but inside Lena, a bright warmth spread. She realized that no matter how far people might drift, human determination and care could bridge any gulf. For the next hour, they traded stories. Aaron told her about new friends on Mars, the way he learned to grow plants in alien soil, and how he sent her photos of dusty hills under pink skies. Lena spoke of Earth's rains, of school life, and of the transmitter she had built with her own hands. Each word echoed with the joy of reconnection, and Lena felt the distance shrink until it was just a memory. When their time window closed and the dish fell silent, Lena stood alone under the stars. She held the hollow photo frame close to her heart. The ache of missing Aaron was still there, but it felt lighter now. She had reached across space and touched him with her voice. Humanity's spirit, its hope, its stubborn courage, its unbreakable bonds lived in her triumph. Lena packed up her gear and headed back inside. Tomorrow she would refine the transmitter, make it stronger so they could talk more often. In every sunrise, she would remember that no matter how vast the distance, a human heart full of hope could find its way home. Asterisk Jamal watched the sunrise from the rooftop garden, the soft light painting the city in gold. He held a small stone. In his hand, a smooth pebble he had picked up on the beach the day his sister Zara left for the lunar colony. They had shared secrets on that shore, laughing as waves lapped at their feet. Now the pebble felt heavy in his palm, full of lost moments. Every morning since Zara's departure, Jamal climbed to this hidden garden above the crowded streets. He tended the hydroponic plants they had grown together, lettuce, tomatoes, and tiny flowers that glowed faintly at night. Watering the roots, he thought of her gentle smile in the stories. She whispered about growing food on the moon. She had dreamed of being an agricultural engineer, bringing Earth life to new worlds. Now she lived among pale rocks and gray dust, far from their seaside home. His phone buzzed with a message notification, but when he opened it, there was nothing new. The colony's communication window had closed hours ago. Jamal tried not to blame the delay on distance or slow signals. He reminded himself that humans had conquered the void before, and they would find ways to stay connected. Still, each silent notification made his chest tighten. Below, the city hummed with energy. Drones delivered supplies. Hovercars swept along sky lanes, and people hurried to their jobs. Life moved fast, but Jamal felt stuck in one place, frozen by memories. He wanted to call Zara and hear her voice, to feel that easy warmth that had made him feel safe. But he hesitated, afraid to bother her with his loneliness. She had new work, new friends, and perhaps no time for the brother who stayed behind. One afternoon, Jamal found an old recording device in his closet, a project he and Zara had started before she left. They had planned to build a portable comlink, something simple to boost their home signals. He blew off the dust and plugged it in. The screen flickered to life, showing raw code lines and unfinished circuits. Beneath the jumble of wires lay the hope they had shared, the hope to speak clearly, without the static that cut their words in two. Jamal felt a spark in his chest. If he could finish their invention, he could send Zara a message that might come through instantly, not waiting for scheduled windows. He could tell her how much he missed her and ask her to send stories of lunar sunsets. With that thought, he climbed back to the rooftop, gathering tools and parts in a battered toolbox. For days, he worked under the sun and under the stars. He rewrote code to adjust signal strength, rewired the antenna for a sharper beam, and wrote messages he hoped would last through cosmic noise. Each evening, he tested the link, speaking into the microphone, "Zara, it's me, Jamal, and Anne." Waiting for an echo, he heard only his own voice, tinny and distant. But he refused to give up. Neighbors began to notice his nightly vigils. Mari, the baker from 2 floors down, brought him warm flatbread and cheered him on. "You'll get her voice back," she said, patting his shoulder. Humans never settle for silence when hearts need to speak. Her words echoed in his mind as he soldered wire after wire late into the night. Finally, on a clear evening when Venus shone bright in the sky, Jamal flipped the final switch. The transmitter hummed with new life, pressed record and spoke gently. "Zara, my sister, I built this to hear your laugh again. I miss you more than words can say." He held his breath, waiting. The hum deepened. Then, through the static, came a soft laugh, faint but unmistakable. Jamal Zara's voice cracked. Odd. His heart soared as her tone filled the rooftop garden like sunlight. He spoke again, tears in his voice. "Yes, it's me. I can hear you." They talked for the longest hour of his life. Zara described the pale plains of the Sea of Tranquility. How she planted the first green sprout in lunar soil. How she scaled the habitat dome to watch Earth rise like a blue pearl. Jamal shared life on Earth, how the garden flourished. How neighbors asked about her. How he missed her cooking rice in the evening. When the signal finally faded, Jamal stood alone, but glowing with hope. The distance still spanned hundreds of thousands of kilometers, but in that moment, his sister's voice had bridged the gap. He tucked the pebble into his pocket and looked at the sky, feeling proud of what he and Zara could build together. Human courage and creativity had carried messages across space before, and tonight they had done it again. Packing up the device, Jamal smiled. Tomorrow, he would refine the link, making it stronger and clearer. He would send more recordings, funny stories, poems, new recipes, and he would invite his sister back into every small moment of Earth life, no matter how far she traveled. He knew that a human heart full of hope and determination could reach across the stars. Tia stood at the edge of the old pier, watching the gentle waves lap the boarding ramps of the interplanetary ferry. In 2 months, her brother Omar had begun work at the Omega Station above Jupiter's cloud tops. He had always loved bold challenges, but every sunrise without his laughter left Tia hollow. She held a small music box he had given her on her last birthday. When she wound it up, it played their favorite song, a soft tune that reminded her of evenings they spent stargazing. In their backyard, each morning, Tia carried the music box with her to the local cafe where she worked. She set it beside the espresso machine and listened to its tinkling melody as she steamed milk and poured latte art. The notes felt like a message from Omar, but they faded too quickly. She tried calling him during the station's communication window, but the signal was weak. His replies came as short text bursts, filled with news of exotic storms and Jupiter's bands, but lacking the warmth of their old conversations. Late at night, Tia climbed to the rooftop of her apartment building. She wrapped her scarf tight against the cold and gazed upward at the bright point of light marking Omega Station's orbit. It moved slowly across the sky, a silent guardian circling the giant planet. She whispered into the darkness, "I miss you, Omar." But the breeze carried her words away. She felt as small as the pebble she once dropped in the station's recycler before he left a pebble now millions of miles away. One afternoon, Tia found an online community of Earth families with loved ones on space stations. They shared tips, tools, and stories of creative reconnections. She read about a father who sent a live cloud of Earth air in a sealed jar, a mother who programmed a floating photo frame to follow her daughter's messages, and friends who collaborated on a virtual scavenger hunt across 2 worlds. Each story glowed with the energy of human ingenuity and care. Inspired, Tia decided to create something of her own. She thought of humanity's proudest achievements: landing rovers on Mars, building the International Space Bridge, exploring the rings of Saturn. If people could travel so far, they could build a bridge of words and memories, too. She sketched her plan, a simple, interactive hololetter. It would combine recorded messages, photos, and small tasks sent back and forth, so each could participate in the other's life. Over the next week, Tia set up a small workstation in her living room. She repurposed an old holoprojector and connected it to her computer. She coded a basic interface where Omar could see her face, hear her voice, and respond with drawings or quick video clips. She added a feature that let them plant virtual flowers together. Whenever one watered the flower, it bloomed on both screens. The project was modest, but it was theirs. When the ferry window aligned with Omega Station's COM network, Tia wound the music box and pressed transmit. The holly frame flickered to life, casting soft light across her face. She watched the screen anxiously. For a long minute, nothing happened. Then Omar's face appeared, grinning in zero-gravity light. His hair floated around his head like a halo. "Tia," he said, eyes wide with surprise. "Is that the music box?" Tia smiled through tears. "And more," she answered. She guided him through the interface, showing how to tap the watering can icon to make the virtual flower grow. Omar laughed as 2 bright red petals unfolded on each screen. He tapped again, and 4 petals bloomed. "I can't believe it," he whispered. "It feels like you're right here." They shared stories for hours. Tia showed the busy cafe, the new latte art designs she tried, and the city's streetlight festivals. Omar rotated his holocamera to reveal Jupiter's swirling clouds. Outside the station window, he explained how the station's gardens use hydroponics to grow food in space, and how he missed tasting fresh bread. Each moment felt alive with connection. When their time window closed, the holoframe dimmed. Tia sat back in her chair, her heart light. The ache of missing Omar was still there, but it no longer felt like an insurmountable void. She had reached across space with a spark of human creativity and hope. Every connection they built, whether a melody, a hologram, or a shared flower, proved that no distance could dull the bond between them. Tia cleared her workstation and placed the music box back on her shelf. Tomorrow, she would refine the hololetter, add more features, and plan a shared project with Omar, perhaps designing a small rover together. She believed that humans could overcome any challenge with determination and care. As she looked up at Omega Station's glowing path overhead, she whispered, "Until next time, brother," and held on to the promise that their next conversation would be even brighter. Kai stood by the window of his small attic room, staring at the pale blue of Earth's moon. He held Mira's last letter in his hand. Her words spoke of floating gardens in the Venus cloud city, of pale golden light and drifting blossoms. Each sentence felt warm and bright, but Kai could not touch that world. He missed her more with every breath. He remembered how they used to chase fireflies in his grandmother's meadow. Mira laughed as Kai leaped after the glowing bugs, his heart light and free. They built tiny lanterns together and let them drift into the sky at dusk. Back then, home was simple and full of joy. Now her voice came only through delayed messages, and he felt as empty as the silent night outside. Mira's last message had come 2 weeks ago. She wrote about the gentle hum of the Cloud City's engines and the way the orange sky shimmered when storms rolled in. She sent a hollow photo of her standing by a floating greenhouse, her hair dancing in the mist. Kai watched it on repeat, longing to share those moments in real time, to feel her excitement beside him. At the community makerspace, Kai set up his tools. He studied images of Venus's upper atmosphere and read about the city's CUM network. Human engineers had once tamed volcanoes on Io and built tunnels beneath Mars's surface. If they could do that, couldn't they also find a way to speak across two worlds? His chest swelled with pride in human ingenuity. He sketched a plan on a scrap of paper, a small drone with a sensor pod and a CUM link. The drone would ride the upper winds of Venus, broadcasting his voice directly to the Cloud City's receivers. It would not replace a live call, but it would bring his words closer, free from the delays of orbit relays. He folded the sketch and tucked it into his pocket. For nights he worked beneath flickering lights, soldered tiny circuit boards, repurposed a remote control glider, and coded a simple message loop. His fingers became stained with solder and grease, his eyes red from long hours. When his hands trembled, he remembered Mira's gentle smile and pressed on. Humans never gave up when hearts longed to connect. Neighbors at the makerspace noticed his tireless effort. Lena, who ran the hydroponic station, brought him fresh herbs and cheered him on. Raj, the hobby astronomer, offered extra lenses and helped him point a small dish toward Venus's projected orbit. Their kindness reminded Kai that human bonds extended across any distance, that people cared and helped one another. One evening, as the sun sank, Kai carried the drone to the rooftop. The city lights glowed below like a sea of stars. He set the CUM dish beside him and aimed its dish at the spot where Venus would rise. He felt a flutter of nerves as he connected the final wire and flipped the switch. The dish hummed softly. Waiting, he pressed record on the drone's pod and spoke into the tiny microphone. "Mira, it's Kai. I miss you more than words can say. I built this so you can hear my voice carried on Venus's wind." His voice trembled at first, then steadied. He sent a gentle wave of sound toward the clouds, hoping it would reach her. For a tense moment, there was only the night breeze. Then, through the static, came a soft laugh in Mira's voice, distant but clear. "Kai, is that you?" His heart leaped as he listened to her name on his lips, carried back across the void. He nodded, even though she could not see him, and whispered, "Yes, I'm here." They spoke until the signal faded, trading questions and stories. Kai described how the garden below bloomed under his care, how the city hummed with summer festivals, and how he counted every sunrise without her. Mira shared the fragile beauty of Venus's floating parks, the friends she made among the engineers, and the hope she felt in every breeze. When the link finally went quiet, Kai sat alone under the stars. The ache of missing Myra was still there, but it felt lighter, held up by his own determination and their shared laughter. He packed up the drone and the dish, knowing this was only the first moment. Tomorrow, he would refine the design, strengthen the beam, and send more words on the wind. As he climbed down from the rooftop, Kai's steps felt lighter than before. He carried Myra's laughter in his heart and the knowledge that human hope could travel across any gulf, no matter how far. Someone moved. A human spirit full of courage and love could reach across worlds and bring two hearts together. Niev stood in her small backyard under the glow of the evening sky. She held a worn photograph of her friend Leo, who now lived on the Titan research station. In the picture, they both laughed, arms wrapped around each other after launching a homemade weather balloon. Back then, the world felt small and full of promise. Now Leo was nearly 2 billion kilometers away, and every sunset felt emptier without his warm voice beside her. Neov's heart ached each time she watched the blinking light of Titan rise on the horizon, wondering if he missed her too. Each morning, Neov climbed the wooden ladder to her little observatory shed. She checked the amateur radio equipment she had assembled from spare parts. She tuned into the deep space bands and set the factory radio's gain to its highest level. Sometimes she thought she heard a faint crackle, but it always faded into static. Messages to Titan were scheduled through official channels, and replies took days. Nia felt trapped between the slow routine of signal windows and her urgent need to hear Leo's laughter again. One afternoon, she stumbled upon a news report about the first crewed mission to the outer moons. Engineers had built vehicles that rode through Titan's thick atmosphere, and scientists had learned to extract air from its icy surface. If humans could brave such cold and pressure, surely they could bridge the gap between two hearts. Inspiration bloomed inside her. She remembered how human courage had overcome impossible odds in Earth's history, crossing oceans, flying across continents, and sending explorers into the void. If people could do that, she believed she could find a way to speak directly to Leo. Neov sketched a plan on the shed's chalkboard. She would build a simple laser communicator, a high-powered LED, a focusing lens, and a small telescope could send bursts of light across space. In Leo's station, a matching telescope and light sensor could pick up her coded messages. It would not replace deep space networks, but it could carry short greetings at any time. She drew diagrams of how to mount the LED on the telescope and how to code her words into quick Morse-like pulses. Her chest swelled with pride in human ingenuity and hope. For days and nights, she worked at a folding table in the shed. She soldered circuit boards salvaged from old electronics, 3D printed mounts for the lenses, and wrote software to turn text into flashing signals. Her fingers grew sore, but she did not quit. When she needed extra parts, she asked her neighbor, Mr. Keller, who ran the local telescope club. He lent her a robust mount and gave advice on aiming the beam precisely. Together, they tested the system under the stars, practicing on nearer satellites until her signals blinked clearly in a backyard receiver. On the evening of the first full test, Neov set up the telescope on the shed's roof. She typed a message. Leo, it's Neov. I miss your voice. She aimed carefully at the projected location of Titan's orbit. Her heart hammered as she clicked send light. The LED pulsed and the telescope's mirror reflected each burst into the night. She watched through the eyepiece, eyes watering in the darkness, waiting for a reply. Minutes passed without answer. Static hissed in her headphones. Doubt crept in, but she breathed deeply and reminded herself that humans never give up when hope guides their hands. On the second night, Neov refined the code, slowing the pulses and adjusting the focus. She sent the message again. This time, the receiver crackled. Through the hiss, she heard a soft, familiar voice. Neov, is that you? Her heart leaped as trembling tears slid down her cheeks. Yes, Leo, it's me, she called. They spoke in simple sentences carried on beams of light. He told her about the methane lakes, the way his breath froze on the visor, and how he longed for Earth's summer rain. She shared stories of home, of the garden where new flowers bloomed every year. When the conversation ended and the equipment powered down, Neov stood alone under the vast sky, her chest light with joy. The distance between Earth and Titan had not changed, but her heart felt close to Leo again. She packed away her tools, knowing she would refine the communicator and send longer messages next time. Human hope and daring had carried her voice across the void. No matter how far someone moved, she understood now that determination and care could bring two hearts together across any distance. Kai watched the sky every evening, waiting for the bright dot that marked Europa's station. His sister Alina had gone there 6 months ago to study the hidden ocean beneath the ice. Each night, Kai climbed onto his rooftop and whispered into the cold air, "I miss you, Lena." His words vanished on the wind. The distance felt as vast as the frozen sea beneath Europa's shell. And Kai's heart ached with every unanswered call by day. Kai worked at the local robotics shop, repairing service drones and teaching young students simple coding. He found comfort in machines each motor and circuit behaved predictably, unlike the waiting silence from space. But every time he tuned the shop's comlink toward Jupiter's orbit, he felt empty when only static came back. He longed for Elena's laughter and stories of bioluminescent creatures in Europa's icy water. One afternoon, Kai read an old book on Earth's earliest explorers, people who crossed oceans in wooden ships, climbed high mountains, and flew beyond the clouds. Those pioneers had no map but strong hearts. He thought of humanity's greatest feats, drilling through miles of Antarctic ice, sending probes into Saturn's rings, building the first city under Mars's surface. If people could conquer such challenges, could they not bridge the gap between him and his sister? A spark of hope lit inside Kai. He sketched an idea on a scrap of cardboard, a simple beacon buoy that could ride Europa's orbit and relay messages between Earth and the station. It would be a small satellite with a high-gain antenna and a simple text-to-light encoder. When Alina typed her message, the beacon would flash it back to Earth in Morse-like pulses, and Kai's ground station could decode her words. It was small, but it could cross the gulf of space. That evening, Kai scavenged parts from broken drones at the shop. He gathered solar panels, an old radio dish, and a microcontroller board. He stayed late, soldering wires and testing circuits. Under the harsh glow of the work lamp, his hands grew tired, but he remembered how Alina had cheered him when his first home robot had failed. He refused to quit because human determination could light the darkest void. Neighbors began to notice. The satellite frame assembled on the shop's rooftop. Mira, the amateur astronomer who lived next door, offered her spare telescope mount. "Aim it well," she said, "and you'll catch Europa's signal." Mr. Patel, the retired engineer, brought extra wiring and shared tips on pointing antennas. With fine precision, her kindness reminded Kai that human kindness and teamwork could overcome any challenge. On the night of the first test, Kai set up the beacon buoy in a clear patch of sky. He typed a message on his laptop. "Alina, it's Kai. I built this so we can talk." He triggered the transmitter. The small craft hummed as the solar panels powered the antenna. Through his headphones, he listened for a reply. Minutes passed like hours. He felt doubt creep in, but he pressed on, trusting in human grit. Suddenly, a faint series of beeps came through the static. Kai's heart pounded. He decoded the pulses. "Kai, is that you?" It was Elena's voice, encoded in light and radio waves. Tears blurred his vision as he whispered back, "Yes, Lena, I'm here." He felt a surge of joy. Human hope had carried his sister's words across the solar system. They spoke for a long hour. Lena described Europa's glowing ice tunnels and the gentle sway of her habitat as ice tides moved below. Kai told her about home, how the gardens bloomed, how his students built their first dancing robot, and how he saved every letter she sent. With each word, the distance melted until it was just a number on a screen. When the link finally ended, Kai sat alone on the rooftop, his heart bright with hope. The void between Earth and Europa remained, but he had proven that human ingenuity and love could cross any gulf. He packed up his equipment, planning to refine the beacon for clearer messages. No matter how far someone moved, he knew that a human heart full of courage and hope could build bridges across the stars. Maya stood by the dusty window of her workshop, watching the pale glow of Ceres rise in the sky. In her hand, she held a small clay figurine that Taro had sculpted for her before he left for the asteroid belt mining station. They grew up together, on this rock between Mars and Jupiter, sharing dreams of exploring the stars. Now Taro was millions of kilometers away, and every time Maya pressed her ear to the workshop wall, she could almost hear his laugh, but only silence answered back. Each morning, Maya checked the messages from the station, but they came only once every 3 days. Her heart sank when she read Taro's brief notes about long work shifts and mining routines, with only a quick "miss you" at the end. She wanted more: his jokes, his thoughts, the way he described the glittering dust storms on the belt. She tried calling during the come window, but the connection crackled and cut out, leaving her with static and regret. One evening, Maya sat under the low-gravity lamp and read about humanity's greatest connections, Earth's first radio broadcasts, the moon landing TV feed, the instant video calls that spanned continents. If humans could beam pictures from the far side of the moon, could they not find a way to share a real-time link to the asteroid belt? Her fingers traced the lines of the clay figurine and then moved to a fresh sheet of paper. She sketched a plan for a small relay buoy on unmanned drone that could float between Ceres and the station, carrying live video and voice. The next day, she cleared space on her workbench and collected spare parts: a lightweight pressure shell, thin solar panels, a wide beam antenna from an old rover, and a miniature holoprojector. She soldered sensors and coded a simple relay protocol. Her eyes grew heavy under the bright lamp, but she kept going, driven by the memory of Taro's grin when she first showed him her inventions. Human stubbornness and creativity pushed her forward, even when the tasks seemed beyond reach. As she soldered the final wires, a neighbor walked in: Jin, the station's former cum officer. He had come back to Ceres for shore leave and saw Maya's project. He offered a stronger amplifier and tips on pointing the antenna with millimeter precision. "Humans built the ring habitats and hollowed out moons," he said with a smile. "We never settle for good enough when people need to connect." His encouragement echoed in Maya's mind as she finished assembling the relay buoy. That night, under the two suns' twin light fading from the horizon, Maya carried the drone to the launch pad on Ceres' surface. She programmed it to drift along a calculated trajectory toward the belt station. With a small cheer, she triggered the release. The buoy hummed as it powered its systems and floated upward in an arc, its solar panels catching the weak sunlight. Maya held her breath and tapped the come button. "Taro, can you hear me?" For a long minute, only deep space hiss replied. Then the holoprojector flickered, and Taro's face appeared, eyes wide with surprise. "Maya, is that really you?" His voice sounded distant but clear, carried over hundreds of thousands of kilometers by her little drone.
"I'll die, tears,"
blurred Maya's vision as she waved at the screen. "Yes, it's me. I built this so we can talk," she said, her voice shaking with joy. They spoke until the signal window ended, sharing every small detail. Taro showed her the conveyor belts of shining ore, the tiny plants they grew in the station's lab, and the way the asteroid's surface looked like glittering glass under the mining lights. Maya told him about new dance performances in the colony's dome, the glowing flowers she tended in her greenhouse, and how she planned to teach the children to build star charts. Each word they spoke proved that human hearts could reach each other across any void. When the drone finally slipped out of relay range, Maya sat alone under the fading sky, her heart full. The ache of missing Taro was still there, but it felt lighter, carried by her own determination and their shared laughter. She would refine the buoy's code, boost its power, and plan longer conversations. No matter how far someone moved, she knew that the human spirit's hope, its stubborn courage, its boundless creativity, could bridge even the greatest distances in the galaxy.